Today, I wanted to have a conversation about slowing down because this is something that I can find sometimes impossible to do. Actually, a lot of the time, I find this impossible to do. There is just always something that I could be doing. There is always a friend that I still haven't answered that I need to answer. There is always an errand that I still need to run. There is just always something to do. And for that reason, I think it can feel very difficult to slow down. And you almost have to make an active intentional choice to slow down. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Or at least in my experience, it's not something that I just do naturally. Sometimes it kind of feels to me like, when people are self-employed and they have a workload and they have to kind of set their own boundaries with when they're going to work and when they're going to close their laptop and call it a night, because no, they don't have like a boss telling them to go home. Do you know what I mean? They kind of have to create their own structure and boundaries so that they don't work 24/7, right? That to me sometimes feels like what life is, where it's like there is always something more that you could be doing. That will never not be the case. And I think the reason that this can feel quite hard is because it's actually on you to choose when you put your head down and when you do things and when you relax. Do you know what I mean? No one's telling you when to do those things. But I feel like that can actually be quite a difficult burden that we all have to carry around with us in our daily lives of like, there is always so much to do and there is always a lot on everyone's plate all the time. I think for a lot of us, it causes us to have this like discomfort or almost inability to switch off and to relax because of the fact that there is something else that you could be doing. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of us feel like it's easy to sit back and relax once you've like done everything. But is there ever a situation where you've done everything? No. Do you know what I mean? And to be fair, I think something that helps me with this is making a to-do list for the day. This is not like something that I've just invented, obviously. This is something a lot of people do. And I think it's because you kind of set yourself this, like, this is what I need to get done. This is a realistic amount of things to do in the day. And I'll be happy, if I get these things done. And then once you've done your to-do list, yeah, you could probably do more. You could start tomorrow's to-do list. But you do get this sense of like achievement of like what I set out to do today, I've done. And then you kind of give yourself permission to switch off, or like it makes it easier to, I think. Like that's a lot of the reason why I make to-do lists. Another one is because I just like find it makes it more obvious what I need to actually do. So I'm using my time like wisely. But also I think it does give you that sense of like, okay, I know that I've got shit done today. I know I've done stuff because you've written it down and you've ticked it off, rather than like you probably would have got stuff done anyway, but without the list, you could easily at the end of the day think, oh, I haven't done enough. But then you can look at your list and be like, actually, I did all of these things that I wanted to do. That's something that I find helpful in terms of when to work and when to switch off. And by work, I don't necessarily mean job. It could be your job. Or it could be your hobby or any sort of deadline. Or maybe it's running errands. Maybe it's doing chores around the house. Maybe it's just putting fuel in the car, dropping someone to work, meal prepping your lunches for the week. Like there's many things that we do, that aren't work. But you see what I mean by this like analogy that they're still like, it's still you getting shit done. And I feel like it can be very hard to slow down in life. It can be very hard to slow the pace down and to switch off because that is something that's in your hands and only you can really do that. Because there will never be really a time in your life where you don't have things to do and where there isn't things that you could be going and getting done. It has to be an active choice of what pace do I want to live my life at, which a lot of ours is, if I'm being real, is to live a life that makes me happy, right? Of course, it's to get stuff done and to grow and to progress and stuff, but it's generally just to feel fulfilled and happy and enjoy my life. That's kind of at the end of the day what everyone wants. And I think I would be lying to myself if I said that being on the go, trying to do things all the time, is going to get me to that goal. Living my life at a pace where it's difficult to switch off and I feel like I'm never doing enough and there's always more to do. Is that going to get me to my goal? No, like realistically, it's not. I think sometimes it's like the reason that I am doing so many things and putting so much kind of on my plate is because I want to get a lot out of my life, right? I want to do everything. I want to try everything. I want to have all the hobbies and try all these skills and see all my friends and work, but also do my podcast. And do you know what I mean? Like I want to do everything all at once because I want my life to have everything in it. Do you know what I mean? I don't want anything to give. But at the end of the day, I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot by trying to do everything 24/7, right? Because, if I zoom out, like I said, at my overarching kind of goal, what I want is to feel like I'm living a life that I enjoy. I'm unfortunately not going to get that if, even though my intentions are good, if I'm trying to make myself do everything all the time, because then I do feel like I'm in this constant state of doing things and never just being. Does that make sense? I feel like this is just something that a lot of us struggle with, because also the world is very fast paced and it is near impossible to kind of pull yourself out of that and put yourself in a world that's a little bit slower. That's quite like a difficult thing to do. It's not impossible, but it takes, work to pull yourself out of how fast the world is and how there's like a never-ending amount of things to do all the time. And I think the weird thing is with things like this is quite often when I kind of feel that overwhelm, I'm like, oh, it's because I need to make some big shift in my life, right? It's like, oh, it's my job, or oh, it's my relationship, or oh, it's my friendships, or oh, it's the, do you know what I mean? It's just like any of these big kind of areas in our life, we tend to blame those. We're like, oh, it's because my job is too demanding, or it's because my relationship isn't going well, or I need to find new friends, or whatever. It's something quite big and quite difficult to change, right? We think that's why I'm feeling so overwhelmed, that's why I'm feeling so run off my feet. When sure, like of course those things can cause us stress. I think a lot of the time, I'm kind of talking from my experience, but if someone else relates, that would be great. A lot of the time when I feel this like run off my feet, like I'm trying to do everything, I'm so busy, there's so much to do, and it's like I'm thinking, oh, it's because of this and this because of that. It's like, no, it's actually more so because of my own choices. It's more because of the pace that I'm making myself go at. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not necessarily, yeah, maybe my job isn't ideal, or maybe, yeah, something isn't ideal, but I think we, or at least I, tend to overlook the small little decisions that I'm making that are causing me to feel this overwhelm, and that it's not necessarily something I need to point my finger at, like any big thing in my life that I need to change. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of small little shifts in my day, or in my mindset, or in how I'm talking to myself, or when I'm waking up. Do you know what I mean? Just like tiny little things that I could tweak and I wouldn't feel so run off my feet. Do you know what I mean? But it's so much easier to be like, it's because of my job, it's because of like my boyfriend or something. Do you know what I mean? When it's like, I don't know, in my experience, a lot of the time when I feel like that, it's quite often like something that I could just tweak a few little things. For example, like, say you're feeling really stressed and overworked, too much on your plate, whatever. Something as small as like, this is something I'm so bad at doing, but I know it would make me feel so much better, is, if I feel like I don't have like enough time in my day, right? And I'm like, oh, I've got work and then I have to do this after work, and there's no like moment in my day that I can like just chill out. Ugh. I could just wake up a bit earlier. Say I start work at 8 o'clock, right? I could, instead of wake up at 7, wake up at 6. And then, I've bought myself an extra hour. I could sit and have my coffee. I could read my book. I could go for a little walk if I wanted. I could go for a swim in the sea. These things, like, I could do those things. And I guarantee to myself that I would feel so much better if I did, because then I still, I'm going to work and I'm still doing these things. My job didn't need to change, but like how I'm kind of building it around my life can. And I would probably feel a lot different, because I would feel like, oh, I actually am having that time to myself. I am giving myself a moment to breathe and to prepare for my day and whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes there are little things that we could do that would make us feel a lot better that like sometimes we just don't do. And I'm saying this as a guilty person. There's so many things that I feel like I know would make me feel less rushed and less busy, but I just make the same fucking like stupid mistake of like living my life at the same pace and not changing anything and feeling overwhelmed. Do you know what I mean? I am fucking myself over if I'm getting annoyed, feeling like my job is taking all my time out of my day, I need more time, blah, 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 and I am actively waking up later than I need to. That's kind of my own fault. I think there's a lot of little things that I think help slow things down and make you feel like you do have that kind of agency over your life again, because also it is tricky when there are big things that we will have to do. Do you know what I mean? Like going to work and, maybe it's you've got children, or you volunteer, or like, I don't know, something that like takes up quite a lot of your time and quite a lot of your energy, and it's something that like, you kind of have to do, right? I do think it's important to make sure that we're like actually making sure that these things aren't taking over our lives. Otherwise, we will feel run into the ground, and also I think a lot of the time when we have like lots of things going on, we think I need to take stuff out of my day. I need to take something off my plate to give myself time. But I think we actually gain more from, instead of like taking stuff off of our like to-do list, adding something, which seems like counterintuitive, but like adding something that's actually gonna fulfill us and make us feel good, make us feel a bit more like grounded, and like maybe it's more connected with yourself. Maybe you feel too busy to like be with yourself, or maybe it's you don't feel like you have a minute with your partner, or whatever it is that you're like stressing about. I think adding in a thing here and there that actually makes you feel really good, rather than thinking about, oh, what do I need to take off? What's too much? Maybe there's something that you feel like you haven't had time for that always makes you feel like yourself again. Like for me, a lot of the time, what kind of brings me back to myself is getting outside, is being in nature. I've done a whole episode on how I think connecting with nature just naturally slows you down, because you kind of match the pace of your surroundings, and nature is naturally very slow. And I think often we don't spend a lot of time outside anymore. A lot of our time is like at work and in buildings, and we're not actually like outside, and then we kind of match that fast-paced environment. And then I think sometimes you kind of walk and you're like, it just goes like because you just kind of acclimatize to that. I don't know, watch that episode if you're interested, but that's something that will almost always make me feel way more in control, way more capable of doing what I need to get done. And also, like, a lot of the time it kind of gives me some sort of like epiphany. Like if I go spend a day outside, go for a really long walk, maybe go for a swim in the sea, whatever, like I just feel like I come back with like a clearer, better mindset, and like better ideas and better ways to handle things. It just like makes me feel so much better. And this is what I mean by like, yeah, there could be a fuck ton on your plate, right? But sometimes instead of thinking, what do I need to remove? Sometimes that is helpful though, if you've actually like, if there's stuff you can take off and you don't need to do it, sure. But sometimes like adding something that actually makes you feel way better is key. And I think it's also then obviously key to know what those things are for you. Know what it is that will bring you back to kind of earth. Do you know what I mean? Bring you back to that slower pace. Because like I said, for me, going out in nature is one. Also like just pottering around, right? I like to just go into a little town, get a little coffee, walk around, listen to a podcast, read my book, like do nothing, essentially. That is something that sometimes I really crave, is having some time to just not really need to do anything and just kind of walk around and exist and like relax. It's also like getting out and being a bit more active than like doing nothing at home. I like to just walk around with a coffee and like look around. Do you know what I mean? I guess my point is, in case it wasn't clear, is that I think a lot of us struggle to slow down in life and go at a pace that's actually healthy for us and makes us happy, because we're always so run off our feet and overwhelmed by the endless amount of shit that we could be doing. And I think intentionally making sure that you are pulling back and kind of holding the reins of your life and the pace that it's going and controlling it. Do you know what I mean? Not letting it get insane and get to a point where you're waking up, doing a load of shit, going to sleep, waking up, doing a load of shit. Like, obviously there's going to be little phases where that is what needs to be done. But if you're living in that way, I think it comes back to, again, like I was saying, that overarching kind of, what do you want your life to feel like? What do you want from your life? I think most of us would openly say, I want a life that makes me happy, that I enjoy, that I feel fulfilled in most of the time. Of course, there's going to be moments, like I said, where things are a bit crazy, or there's like a situation that's a bit shit or whatever. Like, life is obviously not a walk in the park. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not fucking insane. However, creating most of the time a pace and an environment that you are enjoying is huge and very important. And I think you need to intentionally do that, because otherwise I don't think it necessarily happens. Do you know what I mean? Because like I said, there is always going to be shit to do. There is always going to be a friend that you haven't reached out to, or someone you haven't got back to, or a piece of work that you haven't done, or an assignment that you could improve, or like, do you know what I mean? Like, there is never ever going to be a situation where that's not the case. Do you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of us also feel like we're waiting for like this phase to blow over, or like there's a lot going on right now, but when there isn't, do you know what I mean? It's like there will always be lots to do. Life is quite complicated and there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of things going on at once. And that's why I think it's important that you realize it's up to you to make sure that you aren't drowning in everything. Do you know what I mean? Making sure that you are shutting that hypothetical laptop and giving yourself time to switch off and relax. And I think this is so difficult for us. We all find this very hard. But I think that the more that you make yourself do it, the more that it becomes a little bit of a habit. Do you know what I mean? If you give yourself time to switch off once every like 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to really struggle to actually enjoy that time because it will feel so, you're not used to it. Do you know what I mean? Giving yourself like regular time to be like, I've got a lot of shit done, I've been doing stuff, I'm going to switch off now and enjoy myself for the rest of the day or for the next couple hours or whatever. It's so important because little and often doing that will really keep you sane. And I'm not saying this in a way of like, your life is so hectic and busy that you need to take breaks to breathe because you have so much going on and your life is like, you need breaks because your life is bad and difficult all the time and you need like a moment away from your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's not what we want. We want your life to be something you don't need to take a break from. Do you know what I mean? Something you don't need to be like, oh, I'm coming away from my life. It's like, does this make sense? Like, you want a life that you enjoy and that you don't need like a minute out of. The key is to curate obviously a life that is actually well-rounded and that you enjoy. Do you know what I mean? Again, there's moments of like shittiness in life. I'm not like discrediting that or ignoring that, but I think the goal is obviously to curate a life that you like being in and that you like living in and you don't need, it's like that whole thing of people being like, I need a holiday. Like, I need a holiday. It's like, I need a break. Like, for me, I obviously completely understand when people say that, where they're coming from. Like, I really don't want to sound like a dumb bitch right now. I completely understand that. But I think for me, it's like, I just don't, for myself, I don't want a life that I feel like I need a holiday because there's so much going on and I'm going at such a fast pace and I'm always doing everything and I need a holiday and I'm going to go on one in 2 months and I'll have a nice week off and then I'm back to fucking hell. Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, I would rather have a life that I'm not tolerating being in. Do you know what I mean? And now I'm just speaking for myself. Like, for me, that means going at a slower pace and making sure that, yes, I've got a to-do list and I'm getting things done because it's also good to achieve things and progress. I'm not wanting to do anything. But making sure that when I tick those things off, I feel happy with what I've done, proud of myself for doing it, and I can switch the fuck off and do something else. And I can go out for a date with my boyfriend, or I can go spend time with my family, or I can see my best friend, and I don't need to think about all the shit that I need to be getting done. Do you know what I mean? That's very important to me, to have that balance. And I don't want my life to feel like it's so fast moving that I'm drowning in it. I would like a slow kind of life. I enjoy when time feels quite slow, and it doesn't always, but sometimes when it does, I'm like, this is what I want. Do you know what I mean? This is what I want to work towards making my life feel like. And obviously I'm only 22, so like, I am very much kind of figuring shit out. Not that I think that will ever change, but I just had to question then, am I 22? I was like, am I 22? I am 22. But now I'm like gaslighting myself and I can't remember my age. But I don't know, like, I am obviously in that kind of age where I'm figuring out, getting a rough idea of some things that make me feel good through experimenting and finding out what fulfills me and what I would like my life to kind of look like and feel like. And that is one that I have just definitely, I'm not exactly sure how I'm doing it, but that is something that I definitely want. And to be fair, like, I am practicing it. And like I said, I do make my to-do list and I do try and make sure that I shut this laptop. I want to get better and better at that. But yeah, some like little examples just for like some suggestions, I guess, of things that do help me actually slow the tangible pace of my day down. Do you know what I mean? Some actual like tips that I have are waking up a bit earlier than you need to is obviously huge because then you start your day not in a rush. And I think that's huge. Starting your day where you feel like you've already kind of got control of the day and it's not already like started without you and you're like, fuck, I'm already late, is huge. So waking up before you need to is a nice one. I also think this is something that I kind of want to start doing, is making, like, this sounds so like minor, but like, it's kind of like a metaphor, right? Making my coffee in the morning in like a cafetiere or whatever the fuck that's called. Or like someday I would love to get like a really nice espresso machine and like actually do the whole thing myself. But like, actively doing something that could be quick. Do you know what I mean? I could have an instant coffee and I'm gonna say I do. Like, now I do. But I'm kind of thinking like things like that, they're little things that are always something that I do in the morning. Not doing them in the way that is the most quick and efficient and instant. Do you know what I mean? Getting out of the habit of trying to do everything in the fastest way that it can be done and actually intentionally picking a slower way to do it, because that's signaling to my brain that I'm not in a rush. I don't need an instant coffee. I can take a few minutes. I can chill the fuck out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes I might want an instant coffee. Do you know what I mean? But hopefully you get the gist of what I'm saying. That I think intentionally slowing things down and doing things in a little bit more of a comfortable pace, I think also calms your nervous system because it, like I said, it's showing you that you're not in a rush, that you don't need to be in fight or flight, that you don't need to be doing everything as quick as possible. You are in control and you can slow down and you can like savor your time a little bit. Do you know what I mean? I think that's huge. The little things in the morning that you do maybe, or in the evening or whenever in the day that you enjoy, dragging them out a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like making a coffee is always like a nice thing to do in the morning. I always like enjoy having a coffee in the morning. So like dragging it out intentionally, making it last a little bit longer, doing it in a way that savors it a little bit, not just skipping past it to do the next thing all the time. Do you know what I mean? Some things, sure, do them the most efficient way possible. We don't want to be doing them. But some things are quite nice and there's no need to rush them, you know? And another one that I actually do quite a lot is I'm infusing like silence into my days. Like I'm not always having sound on, like quite often when I'm driving at the moment, I would say it's like 50-50 with do I have music or like a podcast on, or am I in silence? Like, because I actually really enjoy the piece of it. I enjoy that it kind of gives me a little break from like doing things and going places and having stuff to do and listening to stuff the whole way. It's just a bit overstimulating, and I think sometimes it's nice to actually infuse that silence in. It feels like it slows the pace down. Do you know what I mean? It gives you a little breather and it gives you a chance to be present and actually maybe open your window and like listen to the sounds of whatever's outside. Or actually sometimes I quite like to listen to like slow kind of like jazzy music. That is nice. That I recommend. When you're cooking, light some candles, listen to some Ella Fitzgerald, or when you're in the shower, it just makes you feel like you're in a movie. I don't know, it's like fucking great. I also think obviously the stale topic that we all know, our phones, do not help with this pace. I think sometimes doing like slower forms of entertainment, whether it's reading or it's painting or it's doing a puzzle or it's like cooking, can be like a creative thing, or like I think sometimes doing things like that you're not necessarily on your phone, but it's so much slower. It's what people are meant to do. I'm not gonna like go on about this, but like people are designed to do things that are like one at a time. We're designed to do things that are a bit hands-on. It's good for us to actually do real things and not be on our phone looking at fake things all the time that goes at a pace that we should not be going at. So I think doing things like painting or reading or going for a walk, maybe it's building things, I don't know, it could be anything, but actually physically doing something is just so good at this kind of thing. It slows it down and it just makes you feel like a fucking human again. You're like, oh, this is like the pace I'm meant to be going at, not a million miles an hour. Do you know what I mean? And the last one as well, I think, is when you're walking to places, unless you're like obviously in a rush, walk a bit slower. For some reason, I don't know if anyone else does this, but like if I'm on a walk or I'm like walking somewhere and I'm not actually in a hurry, I still walk as if I'm in a fucking hurry all the time, because I think that's just an effect of how we all feel, is we're constantly feeling like we're kind of in a rush, or like we're like got that kind of low level anxiety all the time of like, I just like want to stroll, unless obviously I'm like, fuck, I'm late to something. That's different. That's when you should run. But like if I'm just on a little walk, there is no need for me to be rushing whatsoever. Like I think if you pay attention to it, it kind of weirds you out how often in your life you're doing things quickly that you don't need to be doing quickly, just because you like are in that kind of state of like, I need to do stuff all the time, and it's like fucking weird when you really like pay attention to it. So like intentionally slowing down when you're doing stuff is huge for your nervous system. Oh my god, it's huge for your nervous system. It will make you feel so much nicer. But anyway, thank you for listening to this episode. I think it's just something that I'm working on, something I'm becoming more aware of, and practicing slowing down a little bit, taking that control over my pace of life and how I want my life to feel and things like that. But like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope there was something in it that maybe was helpful. Share your thoughts as always. Comment below. I also post these on Spotify. I have an Instagram. Everything is always linked in the description, all the other social medias. But yeah, thank you for watching or listening, and I will talk to you next Tuesday.